There we go. Okay, now we've got the fun stuff out of the way. Let's get to the even more fun stuff. Coming up first, kicking us off, we have the global race to accumulate Bitcoin. Please welcome to the stage our moderator.
El Hotel Presidente Sheraton es la sede del Plan B Forum, donde han venido representantes de diferentes países y que pues es un foro que es pagado prácticamente y que pues es un lleno total, como ustedes van a apreciar pues en la primera parte de esta exposición, donde participó la embajadora de El Salvador en Washington, Milena Mayorga. Veamos a continuación parte de lo que fue esta ponencia en el Hotel Presidente Sheraton.
I'm going to call the ambassador to the United States for El Salvador, the one, the only, Milena Mayorga. Put your hands together, y'all. Next up, the mayor of Vancouver, all the way from Vancouver. Give it up for Ken Sim. No intro needed. If you have the USAF hat, you know where it came from. Samson Mao. And from my own hometown, founder of the first municipal Bitcoin office in the country, Mayor of Santa Monica, Lana Negretti. Okay, well, we got an action-packed panel, so we'll get off to the races. Pretty unreal. We know we have a limited supply, 21 million Bitcoin. We know divided per citizen on Earth, that comes out to about 0.0027 Bitcoin. We know much of the supply, or some of it, has been lost, is held up. We know that not only all people on Earth now, but humans in the past and the future have to share what is this limit of Bitcoin. The race is here. We have the ambassador from El Salvador, one of the first, a pioneer. We have mayors from cities. Samson, are we here? I mean, you know, years ago, you were trying to get countries to hold Bitcoin, convince them. How far have we come? Where are we now? And where are we going?
Yeah, thanks. And first I want to say thanks, Walker, for complying with the M notation, the million notation. Much appreciated. Yeah, I think right now it's a very interesting time in the world. We're at an inflection point for Bitcoin adoption. And it's almost astounding how fast we reached this point. It's further along than I would have expected. And I think with Bitcoin, everything is happening faster than I would expect. We've had nation states attack it in terms of mining bans. You could call Operation Choke Point 2.0 another attack of sorts. And then you'd have countries adopting, like El Salvador, which was the first. And then now it's looking at the US is going to make moves, and cities, Vancouver, Santa Monica, and many more. So things are moving much faster than I think anyone can anticipate. And I think it is that scarcity, the ultimate scarcity, that is driving it.
In Bitcoin, we talk about gradually, then suddenly. But that can only happen if people are willing to take bold first steps. So I want to go to Milena Mayorga, who I met with Lana up in the Soho House in Los Angeles. And you obviously were part of a very bold first step. So as we go down the line, what is your experience now with, you know, how you're perceived versus how you started, and how much courage did it take to be that first to really put that Bitcoin flag in the sand here in El Salvador?
Well, first, welcome to the Bitcoin country, the country that is fighting for its economic freedom. So in 2021, President Bukele appeared in one forum, Bitcoin Forum, announcing that Bitcoin will be legal tender in El Salvador. After that, we saw some images and film of our assembly in El Salvador adopting Bitcoin, and we have a law, a special law, and all the framework that we've been working on it through these 3 years. It wasn't easy, this announcement, because at the beginning it was a lot of expectation, and I think President Bukele did really good, because Bitcoin came to El Salvador, and a lot of Bitcoiners around the world wanted to see how organic in El Sonte Bitcoin was adopted. But then, as a country, we had this law, and then to implement it, I think it was like the big challenge. Through the national wallet, the Shiba wallet, President Bukele gave $30 worth in Bitcoin, and the people was afraid because the media outlet was panicking around this announcement. It was like a very bad campaign, international campaign against President Bukele and the Bitcoin adoption. So the bad thing was they cashed out the $30. Now that $30 could be $100. But at that time, they wanted to have cash. We live in a country where almost the whole population is not banking. So to download an app as Shiba Wallet, it was a big challenge to bank the unbanked people. So they are with the Shiba Wallet in their cell phones, but not with the Satoshis, because they cash it out as dollar. But it was a challenging trying to educate our population. And I'm really close to that Bitcoin office with Stacy and Max, which are the pioneers also in this country, and they attracted a lot of truly Bitcoiners. And we have been traveling around the world, especially we went to Lugano, the Plan B Forum, which you know Switzerland is really, really well known as the economic center. So for us to be over there with the mayor of Lugano, signing MOUs to try to convince or to try to promote more cities and countries to join us. Because being the first one is not easy. We had to break, you know, very hard the floor, and President Bukele has all the qualities and the personality to challenge the traditional economic, you know, all the economic world, all the economic banks, even the FMI, and I think this is the challenge for the rest of the presidents that are not like our president. I think this is the difference, that we have a very young, smart, and with a lot, he's very brave. Nayib Bukele is not easy to find in another country.
Absolutely. And kudos, unreal for being the first. Another first, the first municipal Bitcoin office started by Lana. Before I move to that, I just want to acknowledge something that I think is really important. We hear a lot in Bitcoin that we need more women in Bitcoin. And I just want to say, these two women up here, I know had to overcome battles with cancer, and they both had a very public fight with that, but they always continued their work, especially in Bitcoin. And I just think we're so blessed to have strong, amazing women in our industry. And so I want to give them both a huge round of applause for literally carrying the torch while dealing with that. Keep going, more. Send it. I remember sitting at the Santa Monica Peer-to-Peer Street Festival, an open source street festival we did, and Lana was there at the panel, literally coming from a cancer treatment to come talk on this panel. It's hard enough convincing an individual to adopt Bitcoin. How do you convince an entire city, a city council, to get off zero and adopt something like Bitcoin? And what are the challenges?
Well, I think, first of all, now we're looking at things a little bit differently. Obviously, where we are, we just experienced a pretty severe natural disaster, the fires. But our economy and inflation has not been our employees, our pay, our wages are not keeping up with inflation. So there's a little bit of a crack in the door there, but for me as a mayor of a town that I was born and raised in, somebody who holds my 6 and 63 license from the traditional financial world, it was an opportunity to get civically engaged with people and to get people engaged civically who normally wouldn't, and also offer the opportunity to have financial education. A lot of our young people understand Bitcoin, but this is really going across all ages, all socioeconomic backgrounds. We talk a lot about diversity and inclusion in our community, but when it comes to, and from the traditional financial world where I come from, I sat around the dinner tables of many families who didn't understand how to save and didn't think they could and lived paycheck to paycheck. So for me, it was challenging because it's something new and you have to debunk a lot of, and demystify Bitcoin. You have to debunk a lot of the stuff that's floating out there that's not true, that we deal with all the time. But I think what's great about it, we had our first event, as you mentioned, as Don mentioned, on the promenade, which is like our downtown local gathering for everybody. And just to have the local colleges and the local community members who were, whether it was small businesses selling their beverages and accepting Bitcoin, whether it was the local UCLA students coming out there, it was really the education part that brought everyone together. And of course, there's a big opportunity here to have those conversations about saving and about our financial institution, because I don't think our children know enough. And I think that education can go across all generations, but I'm just excited that we get an opportunity to engage civically with people in our community who aren't normally engaged. So the biggest challenge was just demystifying and debunking, and now the opportunity is there. We've kicked the door open with the help of Dom, and I'm excited to see what's to come next.
Very cool. Ken, you had some great quotes in an article that Bitcoin Mag did. One of them when your son approached you to buy Bitcoin. I'll let the readers read that. But you had another great quote, and you said, "It's easy to teach someone about something. It's much harder to get someone to unlearn things." In navigating Bitcoin in Vancouver and trying to educate folks, we know how hard it is to just go out and smash buy Bitcoin as a city. What tools and techniques have you used to help people unlearn some of the misinformed myths surrounding Bitcoin?
Yeah, no, it's been really painful. And by the quote, so for anyone who doesn't want to read the quote, my son came up to me about 6 years ago. And he said, "Dad, I want to buy Bitcoin." And I'm a former banker, investment banker, private equity, business person, chartered accountant. And so obviously I knew everything in the world. And I literally said to him, "You touch that shit and I'm going to punch you in the throat." And then, I was speaking with a buddy, Jeff Booth, and he had orange pilled me. And so I read a bunch of books adjacent to it, went to a bunch of conferences, and, I was completely wrong. And so that's the context there. The other context I have to give you before I answer the question is, I'm not a career politician. I actually hate politics. The only reason I ran for politics is our 4 boys don't see a future for themselves in Vancouver. And so our administration, we're not afraid to be fired. None of us, well, not none of us. I don't have any further political aspirations, so we can do whatever we want and what we believe is right. And so, long story short, I think everyone in this room understands the debasement that's going on right now. Even if we do everything right in the city, we make it more efficient, we're fiscally responsible, we're not going to outrun the debasement and we're going to drive off a cliff. So, what do we do to educate people? It's been a challenge. Even with our counselors who are pretty much on side, because we're still early and because it's politically taboo, our first motion was to just explore looking at Bitcoin, which is pretty much, hey, let's look at it. And the resistance we got from some of our counselors was absolutely brutal, because they were scared not whether or not it was the right idea, but what would it mean politically for them. And so Jeff Booth has offered to help come in. We had 31 speakers from the community come in and counsel. They're all rallying, they're getting the community engaged, and we're sitting people down in the city that are writing the report and our counselors to get them up to speed. And we started a conversation. And so, I would love to hit people over the head with it, but we know that's not effective. Jeff always says, meet people where they are. the goal right now is how do we accelerate that? And that's one of the reasons why I'm down here today, to get the word out as much as possible so people in the community, not just in Vancouver, but across the country and around the world, they see what we're trying to achieve here, and they can actually help us spread that word and educate people. And that's not just good for Vancouver, that's good for every single city, state, and country on the planet, because you're all in the same boat we are in. We're not going to be able to outrun the basement. And so we have to rally together and educate people.
For sure. Samson's there like, man, they could have just listened to me in 2016, 2017 and saved a ton of time. So the name of this panel again is the global race to accumulate Bitcoin. I believe that the challenge in the next 10 to 15 years, the race will not be on who can accumulate the most Bitcoin, but who can hold the Bitcoin that they have accumulated. I think this will be a challenge not just for countries, states, and cities, but for individuals. And I want to get Samson's take on this, but first I want to just give some numbers, because we are talking about a race for Bitcoin. So I broke down Bitcoin holdings by country and how much Bitcoin per citizen the country has. And out of the, leading the pack is Bhutan with 13,000 Bitcoin, having 0.016 Bitcoin per citizen. That's $1,730 US dollars. Ukraine follows that up, then comes El Salvador, UK, US is fifth. China comes in, well, maybe fifth, because part of their Bitcoin holdings that they've confiscated is not theirs. China comes in at 0.0001 Bitcoin per citizen. What do you think about this concept of being able to hold on to your Bitcoin, and what do you think it means for a country to accumulate Bitcoin, and how do they hold on to that? How do they get the support needed if government is for the people, by the people, and they can just say sell it or get rid of it? How do we hold on to that, or how do countries, states, and cities hold on to what they have?
It's very difficult. I mean, we saw Germany, it's Saxony, but they sold. And I remember I was talking to Joanna and her team, and they were sending letters to Saxony saying, don't sell it, but they still sold it. So it's not like it's a cohesive decision. It's some group that has some control. And in the US, like maybe it's the DOJ selling. And we don't know why they're driven to sell, or what motivates them to sell, or who is doing it. But it's not hard, it's not easy. It's actually very hard to hold on to the Bitcoin. I think Bhutan also sold some, or at least they moved it to an exchange. Your numbers there are may be different. So the China number, they seem to have the most right now at 190, that's a common number thrown out there, 190,000. But looking at some blockchain analytics, they moved those tokens to an exchange. So it's highly likely they sold. And the US might be in the top now, but the US doesn't have 195,000. I think they probably have maybe 100,000, because the 95,000 belong to Bitfinex and they're being returned. So the whole landscape has shifted from what people think it is. But it's a good shift, because it lets smaller countries have larger holdings, unless the US moves ahead with the strategic reserve. But it's really difficult, I think, for countries to hold it. And there's also a distinction too, where a lot of the holdings now are from seizures. There's only 2 countries that have actually publicly disclosed active acquisition. That's El Salvador and Bhutan. And I think that's also another challenge too. But we'll see that change in the coming weeks and months, because if the US does make a move, I think that will trigger a tsunami of capital from other countries to scramble and get into Bitcoin.
You talk about US making a move, and gosh, it feels like a different lifetime ago that the ETFs, the Bitcoin spot ETFs were approved. It was just January. That was the official kickoff of the institutional cycle. I know we talk about it all the time. I don't think anyone was expecting a nation-state race. But with the US moves, and I open up to the whole panel, are you guys feeling the pressure? You guys are all leaders. Do you feel now that it's shifted from we don't need to learn about Bitcoin to now there's a pressure to learn about Bitcoin and to get something going on in your city, state, or nation before literally in 10 years we look back and go, well, we missed one of the best 10-year runs in anything ever.
Well, I think the race that we're winning, because El Salvador is winning, we have everything. We have a law, we have the adoption, we have a national wallet, we have, you can go and buy a hamburger, Starbucks, whatever you want in Bitcoin. It's difficult another country to take our steps. But President Bukele is buying Bitcoin every day. So he really believes in having a reserve, a Bitcoin reserve. And for us, the actual president of the United States talks about Bitcoin, his son, and a framework. It's a possibility that they are going also to buy Bitcoin. It's good for us. It's a good, because we're giving a good example, but we need like a state like the United States to do it. And we're really ahead. So I think that you are here in El Salvador is a big step because it is because of Bitcoin. And I'm really grateful and thank you for getting to know us. Thank you for going and shop, use your wallets, buy everything in Bitcoin. So our citizens, they see that it's truly important to hold and not to sell, because it was a lot of pressure to President Bukele to get rid of the Bitcoin. And he is also sharing all the profits, for example, in Chivo Pet, which is an animals hospital, and all the profit also to schools. And I think this is a good example for the rest of the world.
That's amazing. So you, if I hear you right, you believe and feel that the citizens support the hold. They support El Salvador holding Bitcoin for the long term.
I think the Bitcoiners are doing a right campaign. So President Bukele is taking these decisions, the good decisions to hold. I think that the people that are surrounding President Bukele and talking to him that not sell, and he's a truly Bitcoiner. So he knows what he's doing and he knows he's giving a good example. The Salvadorian citizens, they are a little bit afraid because of the bad campaign, the media outlet talking that it's like gambling. You know, we had some people in the Congress that they were saying that it was like gambling. So they don't understand how Bitcoin works. That's why it's so important education. We have these cubes where we're teaching to students, and we're also teaching to officials that are going to be working in the government, that they know how Bitcoin works. So education is very, very important.
Yeah, thank you. There's a lot of pressure. I actually thought we had a couple of years. As we all know, there are a lot of people that are vocal about Bitcoin, but there's way more people closeted because it's taboo and they're afraid to have the conversation with their friends because they've been ostracized. Now think about, whether or not, if you're in a political setting, it's a lot more challenging. But this is so important with what happened down in the States with the election and the possibility of a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Like that eats up, 12 years of production? It's just a crazy number before anyone like BlackRock or Fidelity, the pension funds, the states, other states, Bhutan, the list goes on, and who buys it. And so, the choice we have in front of us in Vancouver is, if done right, and if we accelerate what we're doing, we can set the city up for the next 100 years. If we don't, we have a lot of problems. And so, I can't speak for the other councillors, but for me, this is a hill that's worth dying on. We risk the next election, but I'm okay with that, right? Because I don't care about being a politician, and we want to do what's right. And so we're going at it at 100 miles an hour.
Can I just add something?
Of course.
I talked with Ken, I think a month ago or something, but one of the first things he said to me on the call was, I'm not a politician, I'm not like a career politician. So he's really in it to do what's good for the city. He's not in it for reputation. And I think this is a distinction that it hinders Bitcoin adoption. A lot of politicians that we engage with at Jan 3 around the world, they're very worried about reputational damage from pushing for Bitcoin adoption. And I think that scares them into waiting for someone else to make a move. But I think the real risk is not doing something and trying to get some Bitcoin.
I'll just dovetail on that and say I experienced the same thing, much like Mayor Sim. I was not a politician before. I still don't consider myself a politician. I feel I'm sort of the people's person up there, just born and raised a business owner. I own a brick and mortar legacy family business, and that's really what drove me, seeing the changes in our community. And I can tell you right now, I face the same opposition, probably even more so, and even coming here, you know, having to do these trips on my own dime to represent our city because it is not welcomed, and we have a new council. And you know, I'm optimistic. I think there's an appetite, there's a curiosity, and there's opportunity. And actually people like yourself who are respectable leaders in their countries and cities makes it easier for me. And like our ambassador said, the more people who come forward and aren't afraid, and I think that's kind of, at least in the United States, we're seeing a shift, right? There's this common sense shift. There's this, people don't want politicians anymore. People want people who care. So to do something bold and brave really requires you to step out on your own, but the more support we have, it does require, it does give you a bit of a safety net and something to look to. And I'll just say, the pressure for us, Dom told me, if we don't do it, we already didn't do it yesterday, we're too late. And so there was a pressure from the beginning to get out there, not just to be first, but to set the stage, because now, you know, we've done the education and we've laid those ground rules. Our city specifically, you know, is in a financial situation where I feel we don't have an option but to look at Bitcoin. And as Dom's work at Proof of Workforce is putting Bitcoin on the balance sheet for labor unions, it begs the conversation, how do we become not only attractive, much like if you look at what El Salvador did. I mean, what brought me to El Salvador both times was Bitcoin. And so our community is suffering right now in travel and tourism because of the fires. People think everything is burned on the beach. So to be able to bring people, whether it be, you know, the industry, whether it be travel and tourism, because of Bitcoin, there's an opportunity there, but also to attract the next generation of workers. So our organization, our city struggles often with that, and so being able to put Bitcoin on the balance sheet, say that we're considering mining as a city, or even offering, you know, through our labor negotiations, opportunity to, you know, pay those employees through Bitcoin and teach them about the benefit of holding Bitcoin.
You mentioned my favorite thing, workers, and since being that I have you all on stage, we're racing against everyone too, workers to hold Bitcoin for the everyday wage earner, but I don't think it's a race that is antagonistic. I think it's synergistic, because Bitcoin obviously is a network as much as it is an asset, and it's about the peer-to-peer sharing of value. So, you know, I think we can move past this, you know, obsessive greed on holding a asset, and just focus on, you know, things that bring us together. I'm gonna put the politician thing to test and tell you, give us some sneak previews of things from El Salvador to Vancouver to Santa Monica. Samson's probably working with Elon on like mining in Mars or something, so maybe he can give us some kind of hint on that. But a couple brief things on what can we expect, things that are pushing the envelope, cutting edge things in Bitcoin that you guys are thinking about.
Well, we're investing in submarine cable and also attracting good companies. As Petro that is going to build, you know, it's going to move, but also build a very high building. I think it's going to be the biggest one in El Salvador, and also attracting more companies to move to El Salvador because we have a framework ready for them. And also we have different offices, not only Bitcoin office, we have the Office of Digital Assets. And I think this is very important. So El Salvador not only is a Bitcoin country, but also is very friendly with tech companies. I think these are the plans to attract more companies.
Yeah, I don't know if this is necessarily revolutionary, but, and I can't influence what our staffers do, but I'd love to see a strategic reserve on the balance sheet of the City of Vancouver. Like, to give you some frame of reference, we have $3.2 billion of fixed income instruments that are using about 15% of the purchasing power every year. That's absolutely crazy. The second thing is just simple donations in Bitcoin. And this is crazy because as part of this commitment to Bitcoin, our family donated a small amount of money like 10 grand Canadian, which is about $14 US, into like in the form of Bitcoin to the city, and we're still struggling to accept it at the city. We're just not set up, so we have a lot of work to do.
We'll save Samson for last. Honest, give it, because he's probably going to drop a country or something like that.
Well, we have upcoming another education forum in our library. And so, again, I think that's a great opportunity to capture a captivative audience who's not only curious about Bitcoin, but to start to talk about financial literacy and the opportunity to hold Bitcoin as an asset. But furthermore, I think on the wish list, and again, I am one of 7 votes, is the opportunity to engage with our other council members and our city to also look at the opportunity of holding Bitcoin. But also we've discussed, discovering stranded energy and whether or not we can capture that stranded energy, because of course there's a lot of talk about sustainability, and we are a very progressive, sustainable city. As a coastal city, that's top of mind. So the opportunity to capture stranded energy and look at how we could possibly plug in, as Don says, just one mining machine. I think that would be great. But the biggest goal for me that we talked about on the plane that I would love to do, and so I'm putting it out here on this stage in front of all of you, is to really create what we call a peer-to-peer, because I'm sure you have a peer somewhere. I know I visited a town called Sunset, which also has a pier in El Salvador, and I would love to connect these cities together so that we can support each other and learn from each other and build off the framework that El Salvador has set up for us, so that we can have this network of people and build a stronger coalition around Bitcoin.
Wow, y'all heard it here. That could be like a North American Tri-City peer-to-peer, Santa Monica, Vancouver, El Salvador. That could be unreal.
You don't have to have a peer, just putting it out.
You don't have to have a peer, you just have to have a peer. Samson, come on. Who's on the list? Come on, give us a little something.
Everyone's on the list. But I'm not interested to work with Elon until he bends the knee to Bitcoin, stops promoting Dogecoin, and Tesla takes Bitcoin again.
Fair.
But there's a lot of things happening behind the scenes, and I think the incoming Trump administration, whatever the feelings about meme coins are, has changed the game a lot. So the conversation has become a lot easier post ETF launch, and it's again become even easier with the talk of the Bitcoin strategic reserve in the US. So I think it's all starting to come to light. We started some conversations to create special economic zones in a few countries. So if that happens, then we'll see a few more El Zantes and other things pop up.
Closing out here, we only have a couple minutes. We talk about accumulating Bitcoin, lowercase b, the uppercase B being the network. You all are doing incredible things. What do you think about the thought that the race to accumulate Bitcoiners is just as important as accumulating Bitcoin? And these are people in the Bitcoin community, the developers, the builders, the high quality citizens that are engaged, that are sovereign, that make up, incredible organizations that make up cities and states and nations. How much value do you put on bringing Bitcoiners to your country or city? And just briefly, let's close on that.
For us, it's very important that forums like this are in El Salvador, because, as I said before, the citizens, when they see that you go and you want to pay your hotel or pay your dinner with Bitcoin, it's a way to also promote it. So for us, it's very important to attract more tourism, and I know these last 3 years has been awesome. It's been great. Part of our recovery, our economy after COVID was because of Bitcoiners coming to El Salvador, and also getting to know us, the beauty of our country, and to talk good. To talk good about El Salvador, because it's a pioneer in Bitcoin. I think this is part of the positive strategy of President Bukele, and I also want to remark again that he's buying every day Bitcoin, so he's a very good example for the world.
We're almost at time, so last couple pieces, wonderful.
Yeah, no, it's a big deal. And so I think it's important that we wave the flag and we let everyone know that Vancouver's open for business and we love Bitcoin. We do have an ecosystem there already. In fact, Vancouver had the first Bitcoin ATM on the planet. And obviously more to come. But I think it's not just politicians or bureaucrats or what have you saying they're going to do something. It's if they actually do something, if their actions align with what their words are. And I know on the stage everyone's actions align, and in Vancouver we are driving at 100 miles an hour. So if you guys are looking at relocating or doing business in Vancouver, please come by. We'd love to have you.
As a leader of Santa Monica, I'll just say that everybody in this room is dreamers, innovators, and you all defy opposition, and those are the type of people we want in our city to keep us moving forward and being on the cutting edge. And those are Bitcoiners. I've never met a Bitcoiner I haven't liked, and one who wasn't positive. So we welcome you to the city of Santa Monica.
Well, unbelievable, y'all. We've been working to having leaders bold enough to take a stance for Bitcoin, and I think when they do that, we have to give them a strong amount of support in their work. So please join me in giving the loudest applause of the day for some of your leaders in Bitcoin at the government level. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, Tom.
Por tradición y por buen gusto, Harina Más Sabrosa es tu mejor elección en la cocina porque es el ingrediente perfecto con maíz 100% natural, es suave y fácil de usar.
Yo no pierdo tiempo en hacer mis tortillas, me quedan muy suavecitas y mi secreto es Harina Más Sabrosa.
Harina Más Sabrosa es la ganadora por ser la preferida en la cocina para preparar tus tacos y tortillas. Harina Más Sabrosa, el sabor de tus recuerdos.
Superior Staffing Solution te ofrece la oportunidad de empleo que necesitas. Lo colocamos de inmediato y velamos porque tengas el mejor ambiente laboral con la remuneración establecida por ley. Y si no tienes transporte, no te preocupes. Nosotros nos encargamos de que llegues a tu lugar de trabajo. Ofrecemos oportunidades de trabajo e igualdad para todos. Superior Staffing Solution. Para información, llámanos.
Hola amigos, acabamos de volver de un viaje en El Salvador. Por cierto, un país hermoso.
Viajamos con el propósito de reunirnos con líderes salvadoreños para ayudarnos a conseguir becas en la reconocida Universidad Gerardo Barrios.
Tus donaciones ayudarán a que jóvenes salvadoreños se conviertan en futuros líderes.
Para incrementar el número de becas, nuestra fundación, Latin Comunidad, necesita tus donaciones. Ayúdanos escaneando el QR.
Sorprende a tus familiares en Guatemala, El Salvador y Honduras con Transporte Zozuleta, enviando tu caja este 15 y 29 de enero. Agenda tu servicio llamando al 301-559-7820 y recogemos tu caja en la puerta de tu casa. Llámanos al 301-559-7820 y agenda tu servicio. Salidas a 15 y 29 de enero. Buen inicio de año te desea Transporte Zozuleta, servicio de puerta a puerta.
En Megamar Supermarket Chile, nos encanta saber que somos el supermercado por tradición de nuestra comunidad latina, porque cada día tenemos la oportunidad de apoyarte y servirte como siempre, con grandes ofertas y descuentos increíbles. Nuestras instalaciones están diseñadas para que puedas disfrutar de nuestros amplios departamentos. Megamar Supermarket Chile, ubicados estratégicamente en el corazón de la ciudad de Hyattsville. Megamar Supermarket Chile, el supermercado por tradición.
Somos abogados y notarios salvadoreños en los Estados Unidos y en El Salvador. Nuestra experiencia, nuestra honestidad, profesionalismo, capacidad ética e integridad nos permite darte buenas soluciones a tu caso. Por favor, permítanos ayudarte, visítanos en nuestra oficina o llámanos al número que aparece en pantalla.
A la hora de hacer tus taxes, no busques a cualquier persona. En M&G somos autorizados por el IRS. Contamos con personal profesional para ayudarte en la preparación de tus taxes personales y de negocio. M&G es todo en un solo lugar.